I'm live theoretically.
We are theoretically live. Hopefully people were able to come over here and find us.
See if anybody's there.
Again, let me solicit in the chat if anybody's there. It should show up in the chat. Hello.
I might have trouble coming over.
There's one person.
There is.
Somebody's with us.
All right.
3, 4. Okay, all right. People are making their way over here. Although we don't know if they're the same ones that were on the member Q&A. People might have just gotten an alert. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. For those of you who just got booted off of the Vimeo feed, that's the first strike against Vimeo. I think our internet here is strangely crappy as well today, much more so than usual. So we're even hardwired into the Ethernet, and it's giving us some trouble. So if you're just joining us because you saw the alert on your YouTube and you are not a member of the Living Wisdom Library, we were doing a members only Q&A, which is now a public Q&A because this is the only other way we can broadcast after technical difficulties. So, but we answered all the really cool questions already. So now, unfortunately, I lost the other ones. What else were people asking? There was let me see. There was an interesting one that had been sent in. Let's see. Some of these, I know that some people are asking some things about sort of brain chemistry and things. I've added those to the queue for the podcast. Those seem more podcasty kinds of questions, and we've dealt with some of them before. So stay tuned, and we'll get to that. Trying to keep these social process kind of questions today. So I'm experiencing some sadness over not having friends to share little wins like work wins. This COVID context. The one friend that I told a win to is a disagreeable. He didn't even congratulate me and said some random thing about it. I'm in a new place. I feel alone and lonely. COVID makes it infinitely hard. What to do or how to feel better. You can't fish where the fish are when it's COVID time. So yeah, this is interesting. There was actually, I think in the New York Times, I'm pretty sure it was in the Times this week, there was actually an article about this. Like, we've lost water cooler culture. People no longer have a built-in peer group who know exactly what kind of week you had and kind of can share that experience in this very organic social way, which is very village. That's a very typical village experience. Like, everybody's kind of going through the same thing in the same specific little area and can come together and communicate about it. So yeah, how do we create community during COVID in ways that are not immediately intuitive?
Finally, the utility of social media.
Yeah, the double-edged sword of social media.
That's true. I actually had someone who, as a wider principle, and then you remind me where I got lost, where we came from. Okay.
Story of my life, people.
What feelings are the result of inputs of some kind of energy. So some kind of input of some kind, somebody's smile, the wind, a piece of popcorn. There is some kind of change in the environmental inputs that impacts the nervous system and then results in a cost-benefit analysis about whether that's a good thing, a bad thing, whether there's now a threat, whether there's an opportunity, etc. So that results in a thing that we're going to call feelings. So if you're bored, that means that the environmental inputs that are hitting your nervous system, none of them has an exciting opportunity for expending energy and improving your circumstances in a way that appears worth the effort. That is what boredom is. So boredom is actually causing you to basically say, you know what I need to do? I probably need to make a fairly significant change in my location, in the environment, because the environment that I'm looking at right now doesn't have a worthwhile behavioral target. Okay? So that's what that feeling is. So loneliness, depression, et cetera, all this kind of, i.e., well, what this person is talking about is loneliness. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the faces of loneliness, i.e., I want to have the experience where I have a win and I have somebody, I get to watch an empathic process, because if somebody is happy about my win, then I know they're on my team. And that's one of the ways I find out that I've got coalition. So it's a coalition affirmation circuit that is looking to get information. And so when you don't have that, you feel coalition deficient. So what the person is really reporting here is coalition deficiency, i.e. that's what loneliness is coalition deficiency. In the same way, when you're thirsty, you're water deficient. Okay, so that's why I had one person fix this problem by, believe it or not, starting some Facebook group, which would be like the last thing I would ever do in my life. But that was the logical thing. She's in a small town. She's sort of unusual personality-wise. I think she's real smart. She's a vegan, living in somewhere in the backwoods of Wisconsin or whatever it is. It's like cheese country. Like, where were you going to make friends? And the answer is
bracing for all the hate mail.
There you go. Every Green Bay Packer fan.
I always get the hate. He doesn't get the hate mail. I get the disparaged Midwesterners.
I'm too disagreeable. Everybody's worried about what I'll say back.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is that what she needed to do is develop some Facebook group around something. I can't remember what it was, but I got an email from her about 3 or 4 months later saying it worked like an incredible charm.
Yeah, it can.
She had a couple of old friends from high school that found her or whatever, and a way big lift of her mood. So we solved the coalition deficiency process. You don't actually have to be in proximity with anybody. What you need is the energy or esteem signals that come that they find you valuable and they like you. Okay, that can be over the phone. That can be over digital media. It can be nice in person, but it doesn't have to be. So the coalition deficiency can be solved, and so that's how we solve it. We're looking for, repeat exposure situations that lead to the gentle, supportive cross-examination processes and willingness and sort of openness and appropriateness of sharing our small victories and our defeats. That's what, i.e. coalition. That's where we're at.
I think I know the questioner here, so I know a little something about them, and I know that there's an aspect of the social media coalition, or just the sort of anonymous internet coalition, that applies in this case, and I think to a lot of people, because this is a very high IQ person, somebody who already has like a lot of, there's connected to a lot of people with a lot of shared interests around plant-based stuff and things, all those kinds of things. But I think there is the feedback, the value feedback that you get from other humans, that you are valuable, is only as good as your estimate of the value of that person. So some random person on Facebook who's joined your Facebook group who says, "Oh my gosh, I love your recipe," or whatever it is. It doesn't mean much when you are the coalition that you're seeking. Is that those would have to be people who are adding value to your experience. And so it's really only the feedback of people who are adding value to your experience that is really meaningful and takes you out of that kind of loneliness equilibrium. And that, I mean, that's sort of this is the cost of doing business as a high IQ person who has a narrower, just a higher standard for who qualifies for coalition. If you were just a little dumber and your standards were a little lower, and then you could have lots of friends who could share your wins, and that feedback would feel meaningful to you in a way that it does not, because you have a very big brain for a chimp. Start eating lead paint chips. Damn right. There you go. And if that doesn't work, just, bang your head into things. Yeah, something. I can recommend drinking, chronic drinking for 15 years or so. That'll take you down a few points. Yeah, we got
There's
some methods.
Always a solution. Yeah. If you're a chick, go to a Menzie meeting. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Like the locusts, you know what I mean?
My favorite little fun fact about Mensa is that there's this, again, reality TV. I have a soft spot. There's this amazing documentary series called The Vow. I don't know if people are watching this or not, but it's this kind of inside view of a cult, essentially. And it's really incredible that I never interacted with this cult, because personal transformation, spiritual, it was all happening right around the time that I would have been very susceptible. Of course, it turns into like this just filthy, bizarre sex cult where they're like branding the women and selling people into sexual slavery and all of this shit. But the guy at the top of this whole cult was, in addition to what's her name, Marilyn von Sant or
yes,
whatever.
yeah, Von Savant.
Von Savant.
Right.
So for those of you who are not old like we are and don't remember her column in Parade every week, she was the highest IQ person, or one of the highest IQ people in the world, according to Mensa, according to this test. Apparently this guy, the founder of this cult, Keith Raniere, was in that group with her. There were like 3 of them who tested at that same level. So he's supposedly like this super high IQ dude, and so this attracts all these people into his cult. And anyway, you just reminded me of Mensa. Don't go to a Mensa meeting if you're a female, because you will be captured by Keith Raniere and sold into sexual slavery.
It was worth thinking about.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm very sympathetic to that whole set of problems. And yeah, it's shitty and hard in COVID, because you can't, if you've already got kind of a limited pool of people who qualify for coalition anyway, it is harder and harder to fish where the fish are. And you either have to just let your nervous system settle for inferior applicants, or just kind of look at this as an unusual period in time that you're waiting out until you can interact with humans again.
I could be wrong, but all of the great character of The Big Short.
Oh yeah.
I could be wrong, but I don't see how. COVID has got to be ending soon anyway. In other words, I would be very surprised if it isn't a moderate problem, 90 days from now. So the reason I say so is the sum total of deaths per capita that have taken place around the world in other countries. And we are reaching sort of that level now. Everybody is hovering around, I guess, whatever it is, 0.6 per thousand to 0.8 per thousand, whatever it is. So the point is that, this isn't some indefinite process, for crying out loud. So sooner or later, this mess dovetails down into something sane and reasonable. So, the problem, you can just go ahead and suffer for a while longer, because it's not going to be another 6 months of this. I could be wrong, but I don't see how. All right.
I think there might be. I think it might be time to invest in some social strategies that. Yeah.
We'll see.
But I would not recommend that those be Facebook social strategies for all of the reasons, or all the complaining I've done about social media lately, and reasons I've left Facebook, and that's a whole other conversation.
All right.
So we can get into that. I really am going to make a video on that soon, as I get my shit together. I've been busy with hacked email, ironically, and many other things. Okay, so Dr. L talks about disagreeable distance, and I have a question about this. Is it a good move to make it known to a disagreeable person that I'm aware of their dishonest ways, especially when it gets malignant? Probably not.
Dishonest isn't the same thing as disagreeable.
Right.
These are very different issues. So that you'd have to clarify what it is that you're really trying to figure out there.
And this is a begin with the end in mind kind of question too. So,
good.
I mean, disagreeable distance we recommend with sort of just, shitheads. This is kind of the theme of the day. There was a question before we moved from Vimeo, the guy saying he was felt personally attacked because he's been called a shithead many times.
Didn't happen by accident.
But even that guy, there are people in his world who, relative to him, are bigger shitheads. And I have talked. I have one friend in particular who is just a disagreeable SOB, and it has taken me a really long time to kind of come to terms with that. We make this reference all the time to, you guys remember Charlie Brown, when Lucy would hold the football for Charlie to kick it, and she pulls it away at the last minute every single time, and he falls for it every single time. So this is like Lucy and the football with this guy. It's always, the interaction is always the same. I always kind of feel chiseled and exploited and manipulated and taken advantage of. And there's no specific dishonesty that I would want to necessarily call out, or there's nothing that I'm entitled to that I'm not getting. Those would be different circumstances than just dealing with somebody who has personality cancer that you want to get some distance from, which is what we're usually talking about when we talk about disagreeable distance strategies. If you're paying some cost behind their dishonesty and not confronting them about it, that's a different situation. We'd have to know more specifics.
Somebody else is asking, I'd like to know why you call it disagreeable distance. I find the distance from disagreeable people to be actually
agreeable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's i.e. we're trying to get the distance from the disagreeable people. Obviously.
Yes.
You just think about disagreeable people as people that sort of stack the deck in your Friday night poker game. So they're just kind of stacking the deck a little bit. They're just giving themselves a little advantage. And you might even like to play poker. So there you go again. And then you walk away and you're down $35.
Like, what happened?
And you're like, you know what? Why am I always down $35? I can count the cards as well as this guy can. Why does this keep happening? Disagreeable people are just going to sort of stack the deck about the cost benefit process between two individuals. And once you identify that that's what's going on, we try to have the interaction between those two lives. It's kind of, I think of it as a Venn diagram that if you've got this much overlap, you're in the red. So it's red. The intersection between your two lives is red, i.e. you're in red ink. It's negative for you. If you keep moving it and keep moving it, there can be at some place where it turns green or black, i.e. it turns positive. Okay, it's like, okay, well, in little doses, that person is actually a positive in my life. Any more than that, it flips to negative. And so that's what the disagreeable distance is how far did the centers of those two circles, do those two lives need to be? Sometimes that's the origin of the phrase, I don't know, this town is big enough for the two of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is all like, okay.
Yeah.
All my exes are in Texas. That's why I'm in Tennessee. Like whatever the deal is, you get as far enough as you need to be, but close enough to maintain a relationship that may be worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's often people who really need to be practicing disagreeable distance are agreeables too.
Yeah.
I mean, are certainly agreeable relative to the disagreeable person. Yeah. And it's tricky because that overlap is often of great utility to the agreeable person. So one of the reasons that I had trouble with my disagreeable is that as an agreeable, I needed to free ride on their disagreeableness when I was in a tough situation. So there were many situations where I really needed that disagreeable assistance to extract myself from some other relationship or some other job or something like that. And so that person was a real asset to me, but then I'm paying the cost of the relationship all the rest of the time and putting up with all the other chiseling disagreeable crap. And it just is too high price to pay for any benefit that might come out of that relationship.
And by the way, I met that individual.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And the 11 minutes that I have spent in that individual's presence were all unpleasant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the feeling was mutual.
Yeah.
It was a fair fight.
It was. And hilariously, but none of it looked from the outside like, there was no overt conflict or anything like that. But, they're both having this disagreeable experience. So yeah, that's good. I mean, if you are agreeable, people need reality checks on these things sometimes. And so you're my new disagreeable insurance policy instead of that person, because he is slightly less disagreeable than that other human was, but just as effective when I need to free ride on a disagreeable human to solve some problem I can't solve. And so it's you need people like that to be a reality check on these other individuals in your life and how costly they actually are.
There you go.
And it also just takes time. How many times does the football have to be yanked away at the last minute for you to be like, Jesus Christ, I feel terrible about myself every time I interact with you. So maybe this is not a great relationship to continue investing in. So
all good. All right, one more.
We had, let's see. Thought I had a short one I was going to throw in there. Maybe not.
All right.
Let's see what else we have.
See.
Whoa. I have no idea. For years, I have experienced a deep, loud bass tone in my skull that makes sleep difficult and rare, even with Zopiclone. The medical world has nothing for me other than more pills. Do you have any insights? Very.
No. I do not.
Being attacked
Sorry
by a
about that.
giant insect.
Yeah. No, that's
That's
who knows, some unfortunate, strange neurological abnormality. I don't know anything about it. It's the first time I've ever heard of something like that.
Yeah,
Let's see.
that's one of those things where, yeah, I think you're stuck on the medical world merry-go-round until you just run into
Some genius
Yeah.
that knows.
I mean, if fasting is, sort
Yeah.
of a go-to.
You know what?
I mean, yeah.
I've had very
Weird
strange,
stuff.
persistent neurological problems
Yeah.
resolved with fasting.
Mhm.
So, look up Nathan Gersfeld if you're in Southern California or elsewhere, or Alan Goldhammer at True North Health. Those are two individuals with two places that are places where you can get legitimate, experienced individual to supervise a fast, and that I would suggest has a decent possibility of resolving it. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Well above zero. You know what I mean? So
it's worth a try
it's
if you
definitely-
haven't gone down that road
no
yet.
question, it's worth a try.
Um,
The reason why something like that might resolve is the following, and that is that could be as a result of some kind of mild inflammation, where you've got a structural abnormality that a little bit of inflammation winds up causing a problem, and then puts pressure on a nearby nerve, and then we get the experience. And so if we have a massive anti-inflammatory process that goes on, you don't want to be taking some nasty steroid to do it. Then they wouldn't give it to you anyway, because it's a hypothesis that seems, that they don't have enough evidence that that's what it is. But I have seen on many occasions bizarre, brain abnormalities resolved with water fasting. So give it a shot.
Yeah.
That's where good. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I just didn't think of it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It's usually it's a sort of a modality of final effort.
Yes.
It's like don't go there right away, but go there if you've tried other things and
Yes.
nobody can figure out, and it's persistently mysterious.
Yep.
It's worth investigating.
Yep.
So yeah, we had a lot of really other interesting questions that I've emailed some of you guys about sort of we're being attacked by, like, not just one giant insect, but a couple of them. Gender identity, sort of general wokeness and protests and all kinds of these kind of social political questions, but several questions about gender identity and sexuality, which I think are a big topic that kind of deserve their own show. So we may do that on the podcast this week, or we'll tackle it in a more designated space, rather than just trying to give a quick pithy answer to it on a Q&A. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all for coming over to YouTube with us. I'm really sorry about the technical snafus. We continue to try to work them out. Mercury must be in retrograde.
All right. All right, everybody.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye. Okay.